Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Maria Jaju and today we are painting an older line art that I had done a couple years ago. And quite honestly, I don't know why I did not finish it at the time because I really love it and I always have. But I just finished another painting and this seemed like a really great time to pick up this old line art and finish it up. If you're new to my channel, I want to say welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I am posting new videos every time I finish a painting. So far that has been roughly about once a week. So if you are interested in seeing more of my work, please do subscribe. Now, to tell you a bit more about this piece, I said that I had drawn this a while back. By a while back, I actually mean about 10 years ago, and you can see from the wings and the bridge that back then I really didn't know what I was doing when it came to watercolor. Pretty much just used them as markers and had no idea about local light or local color or the interactions between the various colors. So just plugging away at these very bright colors, and I'm really not in that place anymore. I am much more experienced when it comes to watercolors, and so I want to redo this piece in a way that is much more cohesive, and you'll see me starting to add colors that were previously not even in my palette. As you may have seen in some of my previous paintings, one of the very common techniques that I use is to do an underpainting where I establish a lot of values and paint over that with a color that is more of the hue of the object that I actually want to have, which is why you see a lot of shadows on her and on the birds that are just plain blue. And once I paint over them with the browns and tans, you will actually see it come to life a lot more. I have a lot of fun painting the rocks on this bridge, the stonework that it is made out of. And you see me put a lot of these really harsh edges between the rocks and on the little facets on the corners. And what's going to happen is, even though these particular strokes are very harsh and have these really sharp lines, when I go over all of it with more washes of color, they will fade and they will blend much more into the stones that are around them. I am finally moving on to these crows. And there's one more layer of underpainting done here, and this is just from my head. And then the very next time that you'll see me touch these birds, I'm gonna start referencing them. It's time to darken the sky, and I'm once again wetting the entire paper and then putting these drops of blue. And for the darker areas, I have some Payne's gray that I am pushing in there. This is what I was telling you about earlier. You're seeing the browns take over the blues and fade them out. So even though it was a really weird blue color at the beginning, it's actually going to disappear more and more into the background and just look like a shadow. It is time to paint the birds. You can even see a little corner of my phone there. I am looking up pictures of various crows on Google Images and then putting them together in my head in a way that I can still reference what a crow looks like, even if I don't find a picture of a crow that is sitting exactly like that. I can extrapolate from what I'm seeing. And I have this really bad habit of starting on the right, especially bottom right, and I am right-handed. I think in the previous painting you may have noticed there was a spot where I had touched wet paint with the base of my hand and then transferred a big splotch of it over to a part of the painting that really was not needing any big splotches of color. And I keep telling myself that next time I will start painting from the left side, and time after time it's the bottom right and then the top right and then I move on to the left. Really, really bad habit. I am so glad that I took the time to reference these birds. Firstly, because the primary characteristics of a bird that tell you what kind of bird you're looking for are the positions of the eyes and the shapes of the beaks, and there is no way that I could have done that accurately and have it really look like a crow and not like a black pigeon or a sparrow if I hadn't been looking at references. But secondly, because it made me appreciate all the complexity that goes into these crows' wings, especially those big primary flight feathers. They have this coolest shape that I tried to recreate. I find that a lot of my watercolor work in progress, if you just stop and take a picture of it, there will be at least one weird thing that doesn't seem to make sense. And in this case, her hair has these orangish and greenish spots on them. And eventually the plan is going to be that these are just, her hair is so shiny and so much like a crow's wing that it's reflecting her own wings and those colors, and it's going to be very, very subtle. But while it's still a work in progress, it does look a little bit like she has I don't know, I guess fake color in her hair. I'm starting to make the bridge come together and not just the stonework in the front. You'll see me do this a lot. I'll put down the color with a big brush, and then I can go in with a little teeny brush and get the edges really nice and clean. I did that right around on the left side of the crow's wing. I'm really a big fan of little tiny brushes, I think to a fault, because there are times when I really should be using a bigger brush and I use a really teeny tiny 001, and it winds up looking sketchy, like I put the color down with a color pencil and not like watercolor. Sometimes I do that on purpose, like in the tree branches, but a lot of the times it's really just me not thinking ahead. Another really bad habit I need to break. I try to challenge myself with every painting. I think that is the best way that an artist can grow and evolve. Usually find one thing that frustrates the bejesus out of me, and that is the thing that I work on in the next painting. And in this case, I really wanted to focus on how being part of the environment is changing the colors of the various parts of the painting. So the bridge, even though both sides of it are made out of the same stone, has different color depending on what's around it. The waves under the bridge are another one of the areas that I had started painting back when I first drew this, and I really wasn't happy with how they turned out. I think that I wasn't really referencing them at all, and I didn't really know what I was doing, so it was much better once I looked at some references of ripples and waves, and I could update the look a little bit to be a little more realistic. Right around here, I realized that my entire bottom of the page is roughly the same value, which is the darkness. And so if I really want to show that the water is behind the bridge and that the front wall is in the front of everything else, then I really need to darken this entire area, and I will do several washes that will hopefully help make that stand out a little bit more. I thought that it would be a cool idea to have the feathers on the bottom half to look like they came from her, and the one feather on the top half look like it came from the crows, to tie the two parts of the painting together. Because right now, and this will actually, the painting will stay that way, she is the one colorful spot in this entire scene, and everything around her is dark and subdued and almost night-like. If you watch the middle part of her tail very carefully, there used to be a spot there that the blue has bled a little bit into it. And what I did was, with my tiny brush, when I put down the wet color, I was very careful to put it just on the tail, and in the spot where it overlapped with the blue that had bled onto the tail, I rubbed a little bit harder so that it created that little gradient that you see right under the crow on her tail. And that is a cool trick for when just a little bit of the surrounding color bleeds onto, especially your character, where you really don't want it to be that color. More washes and more washes and more washes. I'm trying to darken the entire bridge. As you can see, I'm still painting from right to left. Haven't learned at all. This is another spot on her wings where the blue of the background has bled onto those last feathers a little bit, and so I was able to paint those darker spots on the tips of the wings, the tips of the feathers, to make that transition be a little more natural. This is both my favorite and my least favorite part of doing any artwork, the white gel pen. Because sometimes it works amazingly well, and sometimes it is so frustrating. The color that comes out is not opaque enough, sometimes it doesn't come out at all. This time I tried switching to a white acrylic, and I wound up switching back to the gel pen. Today the gel pen god smiled upon me. But the idea is essentially that since she is a little bit backlit, there is going to be a little white edge to her, as if she's standing in front of the source of light, and by putting down little edges of white, she pops against her background a little bit while still being a part of it. I finish up with a little bit of black just to do the edges.